2 events on tap for the teams at the CrossFit Lowlands Throwdown, and at the end of the weekend, only 5 will be moving on to compete for the Affiliate Cup at the 2021 Noble CrossFit Games. Thanks so much for being with us, everybody. Sean Woodland and Annie Sakamoto here as we look back on events 1 and 2 for the teams at the CrossFit Lowlands Throwdown. And we start with the top-seeded teams out of quarterfinals that are at this semifinal. And the big news, the Zuriola Training Culture team, no scores posted. They're essentially out.
Right, and it's always a bummer to see any team out of the competition, especially this early on, but especially a team that we expected to do so well, to be in contention, to qualify for the games. Looking at this list, though, Butcher's Lab, T-Bone, this is a team with a lot of previous game experience, a fixture team, so I expect them to do really well.
Team event number 1 is a spin-off of Friendly Fran. They dropped the reps, but added the synchro bar-facing burpees, 85 pounds on the barbell for the women, 115 pounds on the barbell for the men, and it's CrossFit Holistic who wins team event number 1.
And this is a team, Sean, that came in 5th out of the quarterfinals. They had 3 top 10 finishes in the quarterfinals. And you can see, synchronizing 4 athletes on 3 different movements through 3 rounds is really tough. But without their ability to use something like the worm, this is what, they're gonna have to use in order to kind of get that same stimulus, that same synchro team style event that we would have if this was an in-person competition.
Holistic's time of 7:13 puts them in a tie for first place in that event with CrossFit Nordic, and then Bergen Limitless, the only other team to go sub-8 on that opening event. Event number 2, a little bit longer, done in male pairs, and then they will tag the women in, and then they go through all this work. And this event looks kind of similar to something that we saw in the quarterfinals.
Right, very similar to team event 2 in the quarterfinals, in that there was synchro GHD sit-ups and synchronized pistols. So very similar event to what we saw in the quarterfinals.
Time to beat coming into this featured matchup, Team Genius, 20 minutes and 14 seconds.
And this is a team that finished 13th out of the European quarterfinals, and actually 15th in that event too that we just referred to. So, they're used to synchronizing a lot of this work, including the GHD sit-ups. Obviously a little bit different with all of the movements having to be synchronized, but again, it was just 2 pairs, male-male, female-female on this versus all 4. Great job from Team Genius 2014 to get through all that work.
Let's get you to our featured matchup now for event 2 at the CrossFit Lowlands Throwdown for the teams. Jeff Brightwell and Jacob Hepner have the call, and they start with the box assignments presented by CBDMD.
We are approaching the start of the Lowlands Throwdown virtual semis. This is team event 2 as we see our leaders through event number 1. Starting at the top left, team CrossFit Holistic, CrossFit Nordic, Bergen Limitless. Bottom 3 will be 4, 5, and 6 from left to right, Caen, Aarhus, and Motion. We are underway as the event description located on the bottom of your screen, and you will see the red progress bar at the top of each team. This will be male-male pairs. They will finish this event, and then the female-female pairs will go all the way through, and it's synchronized as we bring in Jacob Hepner. And Jacob, we've seen individuals tackle a similar event. This is time for the teams to showcase what they can do. And, as we've talked about, whether you've done team competition at an elite level like this or your local throwdown, it really is not about having the best athletes, but the best transitions, the best synchronized movements, and just the best teamwork.
Yeah, it really comes down to just the best way they know each other, right? Like, it doesn't matter individuals how you know yourself and how you approach the workout. We actually discussed that in the previous video we went over for the males, and I think the females we also discussed that. You have to know yourself, but for your team, it's know yourself, but it's also know who you're going with. If you and I are a team, Jeff, when we approach this workout, I need to know at what point I need to drop for you, and you need to know at what point you need to drop for me, because if I keep going for an extra rep, it's a no rep, doesn't count, right? I've wasted effort, and I just have to know your partner and what they're good at. And so, some of the best teams in the sport, like Mayhem, they live together. They know each other. They know each other in and out, not only from the CrossFit idea, but also just their personality, because they spend all the time together. And so I think you'll see the teams that do well in events like this usually spend way too much time together because they know each other outside of the competition field.
You see Team CrossFit Holistic in the upper left of your screen and Team Aarhus CrossFit in the bottom middle of the first two teams to get to the GHD. So as we saw in the individuals, the teams, Jacob, pretty quick on the dumbbell movements.
Yeah, okay, so if we look at it, correct, Jeff, absolutely correct. If we look at it, they are doing 70% of the work of the individuals, right? So 35 over 50, we're doing 70%. The only thing that's different is we're doing 75% of the overhead squats. So, what I'm hoping, this is my hope, is that you'll see the men's time be obviously much faster than the men's individual time. So you're doing 70% of the work, but of course, the added intensity, the added difficulty, like we've talked about, is I can't go all out. I've got to watch my partner and know when they're going to drop, know when they're going to break, and know what they're not good at. So I expect to see these partners do pretty quick times compared to the individuals because of the percentage of work they're doing.
The team that has a slight lead right now is in the bottom middle of your screen. It's Aarhus CrossFit. They are out of Denmark. Their teammates listed coming into the semifinals: Jeanette Nielsen, Frederik Peterson, your females, your males. That we'll see a little bit later will be Schwartz and Julius Hindo. They finished 5th in event number 1. Again, these are the top 6 teams coming through event number 1 earlier. So after the GHDs, we'll see the teams move on to the 75 synchro single arm dumbbell overhead squats. Switching arms is needed just like the individuals, and I would imagine, Jacob, this is the crux of the event for both the male-male and the female-female pairs.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. And so, in my mind, when you look at these 75 single arm overhead squats, don't make it more difficult than it has to be. So when I look at this, and again, I am not a team athlete, never have been, probably never will be. But in my mind, why make the movement more difficult than it has to be? Why are we not facing each other? Or at least looking in the same direction, right? So Team Holistic is looking in the same direction. I can see in my peripherals my other athlete I'm with, my partner, and knowing when he's going up and when he's going down. But if you look at some of the other teams, they're facing each other's backside. So I don't know if we don't have audio, so I don't know what's happening. But maybe the team in the lead is counting reps. Maybe that's the slower person, if it's a smart way of the team doing it. But in my mind, I'd rather see my teammate. I want to know when they're faltering, when they want to set it down, and how they're feeling.
CrossFit Holistic has a very good pace, Jacob, in the upper left of your corner on the synchronized overhead squats. Take a look at Aarhus in the bottom middle. They'll get a little bit off kilter, and that's what, there you go. A lot of no reps are racking up. That's a lot of unneeded work.
Yeah, definitely. For these overhead squats, like, they can definitely take a toll. I know when I did them, I didn't have a judge. But I know for a fact if a judge gave me a couple no reps on overhead squats, they're just demoralizing. It's the one movement in here, like a deadlift, not a big deal. We're talking like a second, right? We're talking a half a second. A push press or a shoulder overhead, super quick. GHD, no big deal. But that overhead squat, 75, that's a lot of reps. And so you want to make sure that every single rep counts.
Bergen Limitless in the upper right out of Norway, a little off sync. That's where you pick up the no reps. You look at motion down to the lower right, they're a little off. And we've talked about that shoulder mobility. That athlete up front of the white shorts, a little trouble having to torque that body around.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't really seen, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I don't think we've seen this many reps for a single arm overhead squat. I've absolutely seen, like, the open workouts with light overhead squats from a barbell. And a barbell, like you've heard Glassman say in the past, is great, but a dumbbell really brings out abnormalities in your mobility, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. So I'm hoping, CrossFit's a humbling sport. And so remember the year that we went there and a lot of us went to the games and were terrible at pegboard? We came back the next year and smashed that pegboard. And so what you hope is that people that aren't good at these single arm overhead squats, when their season is done, whether they go to the games or not, they look at it and they say to themselves, what was I not good at? Okay, single arm overhead squats. Let's approach that, let's attack that. Let's take my shoes off and learn to do it barefoot. Let's try to make it as hard as possible instead of wearing lifters, and then let's make sure we come back to it, we're better at it.
Top 3 teams now. Team CrossFit Holistic, the first to get back to the GHDs. Aarhus in the bottom middle were the first to get off the overhead squats. However, Motion on the bottom right, their transition, Jacob, we talked about that, was better. They got to the GHDs and began the GHDs before Aarhus CrossFit did in the middle, who actually finished the overheads first.
Yeah, I mean, in a workout like this, you know, transitions do matter as long as you're quick. It didn't have to be like you run to the GHD. I mean, you've obviously got to set it, but obviously you don't want to waste time. When I look at these GHDs, though, they all look, we've talked about in the previous videos, they all look pretty good. The only one that looks weird, I guess I say weird in a good way, is your bottom middle screen maroon shirt, Aarhus CrossFit. He's just sitting too far forward. And so what's going to happen is, I'm calling it as I see it.
Yeah.
You're going to take a break. And that's what they're doing right now. Like, your quads are going to blow up. You're compensating. Your body's meant to be stretched out on a GHD. It's not meant to be in that cramped, uncomfortable position. And unfortunately, now we got to go do deadlifts. So I'd like to see a better GHD setup than that, but obviously it's personal choice there.
We're on the backside for the male-male pairs, back to these 35 synchro GHDs, then 35 synchro dumbbell deadlifts, finishing up with 35 synchro dumbbell shouldered overheads. Then the female pair will go. Right now, if you look at the progress bar along the top, CrossFit Holistic now onto the deadlifts, leading the way. Their males coming into the semifinals. They're out of Sweden. Marcus Eriksson, Mikael Piedemann, and then Christopher Bjorksen was the alternate, and their 2 males finishing up here on the deadlifts, and then they'll go into the shoulder to overheads. When you take a look at this, how do you break it up, Jacob? How do you look at when do we need to take our breaks on each movement?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it comes down to what part of the workout are we in, right? Isn't it chipper? We are definitely going to the top of a mountain, right? The top of the mountain is our overhead squats, and then we're going right back down the mountain. So as a team approaching this, you've got to approach it and say, okay, what does the first half of the workout look like? And then what does it look for the backside of the workout? Because I can tell you, when I did this from an individual standpoint, I did not do the same amount of rep scheme in the front end as the back end. The back ends, they're going to drop it more. They're going to take a little bit longer breaks. They're going to take smaller sets. And so good teams, like we've talked about in the beginning of this video, right? We're going to harp on it again. Good teams know what you're capable of. I know when Jeff has to break. I know the look in his face, and then I say to myself, okay, it looks like he's dying. I got to give him more than 5 seconds. And then we've got to break this up better. Now, if they have a good coach, which is your hope, you should have a coach there in person that's yelling out rep schemes. Hey, 15, the 50 reps for the shoulder overhead. I know we talked about maybe 3-setting it, 15, 15, 10. But, you know, Jacob's falling apart. We're going to have to do 5 sets of 10 because we need to get him through this with good, solid reps.
Right now it's Holistic, upper left of your screen. Picking up for more of the overheads. Looks like they still have the slight lead, but Aarhus CrossFit in the lower center and Motion in the lower right making a move as well. The interesting thing we will see, and it's been said in the Affiliate Cup in years past, and even in the super team era that we had at the CrossFit Games, just because your males get through an event like this doesn't mean it's over. A lot of times on these team competitions, where the female pairs and the female athletes, that's the difference in your team.
Yeah, I think early on in this sport, your females, and I think there's a mindset shift happening right now, which I love, right? A team shift. But early on in the sport, teams that were successful were teams that had good to decent females. You just had to have good females, and then you'd crush it. But the beauty of the sport is, as we've progressed, for some reason, our males have stayed, you know, normal to where they were at the beginning, but our females have gotten stronger, they've gotten faster, they've caught up to the males, and so now I think it's almost shifted to being like, you're going to have some legit females, so now you got to go find yourself some decent males, just keep up with them.
Well, we see the female pairs are now on the competition floor. They will go through the same event, the 35 synchro dumbbell shouldered overheads, followed by the dumbbell deadlifts, the 35 GHD, 75 single arm overhead squats, then back down the hill for the GHD deadlifts, and then the shoulder to overhead. Through the first half of this event, it was Holistic and then Motion, then Aarhus for your top 3. So now we will see how these teams finish up. Can the female pairs make up some ground?
Yeah, and absolutely. If we take into consideration, right, I know these are different athletes, but if we look at the individual women compared to individual men, on average, the individual women were much faster. Like we've talked about, the females have been getting stronger, the guys have been staying about the same sometimes. But so I'm think you're going to see if Team Holistic's females are the same as Team Holistic males, they're not going to get caught. Unless there's huge holes, which in this workout, the only holes that can really exist is going to be in your single arm overhead squats.
Right now, it looks like Holistic is holding the lead in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. They were winners of event 1. That's why they are in the upper left-hand corner. And they're quickly on to the GHDs, followed by Motion in the lower right, Aarhus in the lower center. And there's still, I believe, a male pair in CrossFit Caen in the lower left of your screen, finishing up their shoulder to overhead. That's how big of a lead there is right now between first and sixth. A reminder, this is a heat. So just because a team finishes first in the heat will not mean they are first overall in the entire field. You'll find that out on Game Central and games.crossfit.com. Time to beat, by the way, Team Genius 2014. So we'll keep an eye on that as you see the time on the lower right side of your screen. So that is where the clock is for the event, and of course the red progress bar, how these teams compare to each other. And again, it is Holistic leading the way, but Aarhus not far behind in the lower middle, and Motion right there on the lower right-hand side.
I mean, if we look at Team Holistic, right, so I kind of took their time. I think the males finished technically half the workout around 10 minutes. So if your time to beat is 2014, and if the females are progressively usually faster than the males, as we've seen the individuals, they have an opportunity to try and beat that time.
So Holistic raced through the 35 GHDs, and here we go, and this is the telltale sign. 75 synchro single arm dumbbell overhead squats. Then they'll be on the back side, 35 GHDs, 35 dumbbell deadlifts, 35 shoulder to overhead. The synchro part of this is getting to the top and waiting there for your teammate, and right now Holistic looks very, very good.
Yeah, they know. Usually you can tell from the beginning if someone picks up that single arm and they struggle from like the first couple reps, you're like, oh, this is going to be rough to watch. You can already tell these ladies have practiced single arm overhead squats. They've done it before. This isn't their first rodeo. They're quarter turn looking at each other. They feel comfortable. Like, they're just not going to get caught. I don't think there's any holes in this game here.
The female pair for CrossFit Holistic out of Sweden, Eva Slonaki and Matilda Sigavopuio, and they have 2 members that turned down individual semi-final spots. They were 47th overall in the Worldwide Open. So CrossFit Holistic, again out of Sweden, they come in with high expectations, and right now they are fulfilling these expectations. You talked about this earlier, Jacob, and Holistic doing exactly what you wanted to. Not only are they side by side, but angled enough not only for the video for the judges, but also so they can keep an eye on each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. They're looking at, we could tell the gal in the black, top left-hand screen, and the black clothes is looking at her, like directly looking at her. And you love that, right? You love to see. So then you ask yourself, okay, who do you think in this group is probably the one that's going to struggle with the overhead squats? So if I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at both those athletes, I can see the gal in the yellows heels come up and overhead squats. So my assumption is going to be she's going to struggle a little bit more in the overhead squats. That's her movement that's going to be a little bit more difficult for her. Therefore, the gal in the black is going to pay attention to her and know, hey, it's time to drop this. It's time to switch. You need a break because we need to finish this together. This is a synchro workout.
We've been keeping it with Holistic because they have the lead, but quietly, Bergen Limitless, upper right-hand part of your screen from Norway, if you look at their progress bar, they are behind Holistic, but they seem to be making a move on Aarhus and Motion. They've done a nice job here. Their female pair has made up quite a bit of ground.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if these teams got
Limitless
bonus points
has
for
a female
dressing the
looking at
same.
the other, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it should be. I don't know. Again, like I mentioned, unless they got a coach in front of them telling them to drop every time. There's some way they're doing that. I'm not a team person, so I couldn't tell you the best strategy for that. But what I do love, like I mentioned, is I love when teams match. That is super cool.
Well, for someone who's called Affiliate Cup before at the regional then level, now it's the semifinal level. It helped out, and the guest appearance from Winston, it did help out if we had the affiliates wear their shirts with their names, because we want to recognize everyone. I mean, it's hard work getting a team from your affiliate to make it to this level. Holistic in the upper left on the back side now. They're getting the 35 GHDs. Female pairs will finish up with 35 synchro dumbbell deadlifts and 35 shoulder to overhead.
Yeah, so this is where the workout gets difficult. This is where it starts to suck. Like you've hit the top of the mountain, you passed it, now you're going downhill, and you think to yourself, oh, this is going to be easy. I've done this before. But those 50 GHDs, those don't feel like 50 GHDs. I remember texting Scott about this Panchik, and he goes, Jake, like, I know it's only 100 GHDs. He's like, but those 100 GHDs felt like 200 GHDs, and I'm going to be so sore tomorrow. Like, there's definitely going to be, like, this workout, if I'm competing in this competition, I like the fact that GHDs are in day one. And you might say, well, why is that? Well, because if you're good at GHDs, you want them as early on as physically possible. That way, if you compete with guys who aren't good at as you are at GHDs, that, for lack of better terms, it's kind of mean, but it makes sense that delayed onset muscle soreness sets in and people struggle with it, and you're going to be fine at it.
Holistic in the upper left-hand screen. They're two females onto the 35 dumbbell deadlifts. They have maintained what the men did, as the men finished first in their men's pairs. It went Holistic, I believe, then Motion, then Aarhus. And it looks like the Aarhus females have passed Motion, so they have bumped themselves up, trying to get a very valuable 96 points. Again, we've talked about this in the individual events, Jacob, is that there's only 6 events, only 600 points in the semifinals. We've seen regionals a lot of times have 7 events, so that extra 100 points made a difference. So, you know, every event just extremely valuable here in the semifinals.
Absolutely. Very valuable, but again, like we talked about, you got to be smart when you approach it. You got to know when to put the pedal down for the gas, and when to let off and be a little bit safer with your partner. So right now, if I'm Team Holistic, obviously, you're burning right now. You're going for it, right? If I'm, see who else? If I'm CrossFit Team Aarhus CrossFit, I'm also burning. You're on the 50 GHDs, you're on the slope going down. Like, it's time to let loose the horses. But if you're still doing GHDs, you're still sitting on those single arm overhead squats, take your time, but as soon as you get done with it, it's time to turn and burn.
Well, after the 35 dumbbell deadlifts, it's the shoulder to overheads, and they are finished with their event. And that is what you have to do, but both females have to finish. And again, the synchro, and not many left here for Holistic in the upper left. You see that red progress bar. They are nearly complete. They've kind of run away from the field. This is the second of 2 events, and this will complete day 1 of competition in the Lowlands Throwdown. And again, Holistic, this is just for the heat. We'll see how they stack up among the rest of the field. You can go to games.crossfit.com, but again, CrossFit Genius had the time of 2014, so they've got an opportunity here. We'll see where they finish.
Is that tied?
Looks like unofficially they have tied the top time, so that may be 100 points. Again, this is unofficial for CrossFit Holistic. Impressive performance.
And that's what, like, we talked about. Like, man, I love that we can do virtual. You wouldn't have thought we could have done this. But, man, how cool would it be to have CrossFit Holistic and Team Genius right next to each other? You know they wouldn't have tied. That wouldn't have happened. Someone would have went crazy and got one extra rep to finish it, right? You love to see them next to each other. But hopefully we'll be able to see that this year at the games.
Aarhus in the lower middle. Looks like they may hold on to second, as Nordic has made a little bit of a move in the top center out of Sweden at the top of your screen in the middle. But I believe Aarhus may be able to hold off Nordic. They are nearing the end of their second event of the day as you watch that red progress bar along the top of each team name. Is CrossFit Caen in the lower left right now trying to get through this event. They are just getting to the GHDs on the back end.
I mean, Aarhus CrossFit, hasn't done anything super impressive like Holistic. They haven't just gone straight crazy, but they've done a good job. Like, that's great pacing. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't see any holes in the game. You didn't see someone doing something out of ordinary. It's impressive.
So they'll get second unofficially at 21-27. Now your race. A nice three-team race here, but it looks like Nordic is slightly ahead of Limitless and Motion. Nordic in the upper center of your screen. These are the top 6 teams coming into this event here. So Holistic should be holding on to the top spot overall. Aarhus, they may end up being in the top 5, maybe even as high as top 3 or 4 by the end of the day. Nordic slightly ahead of Limitless and Motion. And then Caen, highly doubtful they're going to make up the ground. They're way behind the other 3 teams still in progress. Nordic, this should be their last set of shoulder to overhead.
Yeah, they're looking good. Like, same cycle, same speed. They've been just good pace for that team, for CrossFit Nordic.
So Nordic is done, 22-32. They'll finish third in the heat. And now it's going to be a race between Limitless and Motion. They're on the right side of your screen. Limitless up top, Motion at the bottom of the screen. Boy, Limitless can hold on. They will edge out Motion here in this second event.
And this is where you wish they saw each other, right? You're like, man, just pick it up, go. They're right behind you, but you can't see them. Obviously, the difference here is like, go ahead.
They dropped and Motion took that spot. I thought Limitless was going to edge them. They broke. Motion held on. They edged them by 6 seconds unofficially to take 4th in this heat. Limitless will be 5th in the heat, and it's up to Caen, who's on the back end of this event with the deadlifts, to finish things up. But as you talked about, that's a situation, had we not been in the situation with the pandemic and COVID, that, boy, we would have seen some really good races head-to-head.
And that's when you're in a venue and you just hear people screaming, just screaming as loud as possible, right? Go, go, go! And that's just the beauty of an in-person competition, which is wonderful. We'll have that again this year.
We do want to credit not only CrossFit HQ, but all of these semifinal organizers for being able to put the virtual competitions up in order to get these 5 teams, 5 individuals in the male and females, to Madison, Wisconsin in late July. So kind of going through that linear progression, and all the semifinals were able to be put on in one way or the other, whether it was in person or virtual.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear a lot of people complaining about other sports that can't get together and can't do things, and we've obviously been blessed for CrossFit that has put forth an effort to make sure that we can do things together, which has just been a huge blessing for athletes and for spectators, and for people being able to commentate also.
Absolutely. CrossFit Caen out of Calvados, France, 58th in the Worldwide Open, 22nd in the continent, 75th overall in the cross-continent comparison. They are trying to finish up those 35 shoulder to overhead as they will break. See the progress bar. They may have 2 more sets to go, just judging by the first part of these last 35 reps.
And this is the point when you see athletes bending over, you try to tell them to stand up, right? If you're trying to catch your breath, leaning over like that, it isn't going to help. You got to stand up, and then when you're ready, grab those dumbbells and just rip it and finish it.
Anything you saw out of Caen while watching this where they fell behind?
I think if I harken back to their overhead squats, I think you'll see them fall behind there. I mean, like we talked about, that's the crux of the workout. I think their males, one of them at least struggled a little bit, that held them back. The females, I think, actually did pretty good.
Well, they finished up 25-29 officially, so it will go Holistic first, Aarhus second, and Nordic third in the heat.
Team Genius and CrossFit 80-20 tie with a time of 20 minutes 14 seconds. Team CrossFit Holistic, they follow their win in event 1 with a 3rd place finish in event number 2, as the top 3 teams all go sub 21. Your overall standings after day 1, CrossFit Holistic with a 20-point lead over Nordic. Team Aarhus CrossFit, they are 5 points up on Team Genius and Bergen Limitless by 5 points for that final qualifying spot for the CrossFit Games over CrossFit 80-20. Be sure to keep it here on CrossFit's YouTube channel or on CrossFit's Facebook page for all the latest that's going on with this virtual weekend of the 2021 Noble CrossFit Games semifinals. We will continue to have highlights and complete recaps of all the individual and team events. For Andy Sakamoto, I'm Sean Woodland, and we'll talk to you next time.